I had just moved to Southern Lehigh High School in Pennsylvania, starting my junior year. Walking into a new school at that age sucked. Everyone already had their groups, their inside jokes, their friends they'd known for years. I had no one. The hardest part wasn't even the classes, it was lunchtime. At this school, only seniors were allowed to leave campus for lunch, so juniors were stuck in the cafeteria, and the thought of walking in there with no one to sit with felt like a nightmare. When the bell rang and it was finally lunch, I grabbed my tray and stepped into the cafeteria. Every table I looked at was packed. Kids laughing, eating, talking. It felt like there was no space for me anywhere. Sitting alone wasn't even an option because every single table was already full. Except one. All the way in the corner of the room, there was a table with just 2 kids. That was the only place that didn't feel completely terrifying, so I walked over and asked if I could sit with them. They looked at each other for a second, and then one of them said, "Yeah." When I sat down, I realized right away the 2 kids were identical twins. They had the same sharp jawline, the same dark hair, even the same little smirk when they talked. I guess they might have been part Hispanic, but they didn't have any accent at all. They just seemed normal, friendly even. They introduced themselves as Antonio and Bruno, and for the first time that day, I actually felt a little relief. We started talking, nothing crazy, just classes, teachers, where I was from, but it felt easy. Then, kind of out of nowhere, they asked if I wanted to hang out after school. At that point, I didn't really have a choice. I needed friends, and these 2 didn't seem bad at all. So I said sure. Before I left school, I got both of their numbers, and when I got home later that afternoon, I felt almost excited for once. A couple hours passed, and then I got a text from Bruno. He said he and his brother were heading out later and asked if I wanted to join. The plan was to meet around 9 that night at this old cemetery that was about a 10-minute walk from my place. He said there was a cool hangout spot near there. The timing almost felt perfect too, because the first day of school had landed on a Friday, which meant no school the next morning. I had 0 plans, no friends, and honestly nothing to lose. So I texted back, "Yeah, I'm down." Around 9, Bruno texted again, asking if I was still coming. I told him I was leaving soon, and he said they'd meet me by the cemetery road. I stepped outside, the night air colder than I expected, and started walking. The streets were quiet, almost too quiet, and every step echoed. I kept thinking how strange this was. Being the new kid with no friends, now heading into the dark to a cemetery to meet 2 people I'd just met hours ago, I reached the little road by the cemetery and texted Bruno, asking where they were exactly. He replied fast, saying they were in the woods by a small lake they wanted to show me, and then he sent his location. I pushed through low branches, my phone flashlight bobbing like a tiny, worried lantern, and the woods closed in around me. I called out, "Bruno? Antonio?" The sound of my voice swallowed by leaves. The map said I was close, so I kept going, heart thudding in my chest. Then I heard steps. Soft, slow, like someone padding through the underbrush. I jokingly called out, "Don't try to scare me," but no answer came. The steps got closer, and I felt that electric chill that tells you something's wrong. I turned to walk back toward the road because it suddenly felt stupid to keep going alone. That's when those slow steps turned into fast ones, and before I knew it, something grabbed my neck. Fingernails dug in, and I could barely breathe. It was a sharp, burning squeeze that blurred my vision. Over that craziness, I heard a voice. One I remembered from the cafeteria, shouting, "Grab him, grab him!" Panic gave me a wild animal strength. I threw my shoulder, broke free, and bolted. I ran so hard the trees became a green smear, and I didn't stop until I hit the road. I knew they followed me to the tree line, but I was faster and I didn't look back. At home, I told my parents right away. We decided to take photos of the nail marks and report it to the school the next day. With my phone record of Bruno's texts, the school investigated and those 2 students were expelled. My parents made me block their numbers and I agreed, no argument. I told them, as calm as I could, that I didn't think they knew where we lived. One night, about a week later, I woke up shivering because my room felt unusually cold. I could hear wind slipping in like someone had left a door open, and when I turned my head, the window was pushed all the way up. It made no sense. Outside it was probably around 50 degrees, and my mom never left windows open at night. I walked over and looked down. Right under my window, the house jutted out into a little ledge my dad always said to jump to in a fire. I closed the window and, with that weird, uneasy feeling in my gut, went to my parents' room to ask if they had opened it. I knocked quietly and nudged the door. My mom mumbled, sat up, rubbed her eyes, and said she hadn't touched it. I felt a knot in my throat and told her, a bit louder, that my window was wide open. My dad groaned, half asleep, and told me to stop messing around and go back to bed. I left their door ajar and walked back down the hallway. That's when I noticed my bedroom door was different. When I had left it earlier, it was wide open, but now it looked half closed, like someone had pushed it just enough to hide behind it. My skin crawled. I eased the door a fraction and peered through the crack, thinking maybe I was imagining things. I should have known better than to look. There was someone crouched behind the door. I saw the shape, the dark outline, the way the shadow hunched and waited. I screamed for my dad so loud it felt like my throat would split. The tiny scream turned into a full panic shout that must have carried down 3 doors. At the exact second my dad opened his door and started running, my bedroom door slammed shut with a force that made the pictures on my dresser rattle. I shouted, "There's someone in my room!" and my dad barged in, flipped the light on, and in the flash of the bulb I saw a leg, someone diving out the open window and disappearing into the night. My dad tore to the window, threw himself out onto the ledge, and ran down the front steps, but he came back a few minutes later, gasping an empty hand, saying he couldn't find anyone. My heart was pounding so hard my chest hurt. I sat on the bed with my hands shaking and inspected the spot where the person must have crouched. There were scuff marks on the floor and a tiny smear of dirt on the windowsill. I called my parents' attention to it and their faces went pale. We locked all the doors, checked every room, and that night none of us slept more than a few nervous minutes. The next morning at breakfast, my dad paced and asked questions I didn't have answers to. How long had the window been open? Had I left anything outside it? Did I see a face? I kept repeating the same thing. I only saw the leg, I only heard the slam. But I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had been in my room that night had been waiting, and worse, had known exactly where I lived. Full of energy and fear, I was sure it had to be those twins who dragged me into that mess. My dad called the police and I had to tell the whole story again. The texts, the lake, the footsteps, the choke, while my hands still shook. My dad backed me up every step of the way, but the officers said without proof of who actually came through my window, there wasn't much they could do, just advice. Lock your doors, keep your windows shut, consider camera. We did all of that. For months, I slept with one eye open, hearing every creak like it might be them coming back. But after that long, terrible stretch, nothing like it ever happened again. Looking back, I keep asking myself why I was so quick to go with them that night. I should have trusted the tiny voice in my head that said, "This is off." I should have read the warning signs in the cafeteria and walked away. If there's one thing I want you to take from this, it's this. Being polite doesn't mean you owe strangers your safety. Your gut is real. If a plan feels wrong, say no and leave. Tell someone where you're going, save the texts, and don't be afraid to involve your parents or the school if something creeps you out. I learned the hard way, but maybe my story can keep someone else from learning the same lesson the same way. Freshman year 2007. It was last period, gym class, and one of the stormiest days of the year. Instead of our regular teacher, we had a substitute. He was older, not ancient, but maybe mid-50s, gray hair, a little stiff in the way he carried himself. When he got to my name during roll call, he stopped, looked at me twice, and for a second it felt like his eyes stayed on me way too long. I brushed it off, but it stuck in my mind. I had always been told I looked older than I was, and maybe that was why. After taking attendance, he told us to split into volleyball teams, and then he slipped out into the hallway near the locker rooms. At first, none of us thought much about it. But that was the beginning of something that felt off. He kept fumbling with the lock, his fingers moving slow, almost like he was dragging out the moment on purpose. Every time the combo didn't work, he'd glance at me with this strange smile, laughing under his breath like it was some private joke only he understood. I laughed back, but it wasn't because I thought it was funny, it was because I felt like I had to. The last girl left the locker room, and suddenly it hit me that it was just me and him in there. My chest tightened, and I remember thinking, why didn't he just give me the combo and let me try? Instead, he leaned against the locker, pretending to think hard, but his eyes weren't on the lock anymore. They were on me. My skin crawled, and I started backing up a little, trying not to make it obvious. Then he muttered something like, "You really don't look like a freshman." His tone half compliment, half something else I couldn't place. That was the exact moment my gut screamed at me that this wasn't just awkward, it was wrong. The storm outside was pounding against the gym windows, and the sound of thunder rattled the walls, but the silence between us felt louder. I forced myself to grab my backpack off the bench, saying I'd just get the janitor to cut the lock, and rushed for the door before he could say another word. He put his hand on my shoulder and said, "We'll figure this out," like he was comforting me, but it felt wrong. He tried the combo again with that hand still on me, and when it failed, he didn't pull away. His fingers slid from my shoulder down to my lower back. I shoved away, grabbed my bag, and lied, "I'm gonna miss my bus." He tried the lock one more time. It clicked open. He gave this slow smile and then walked out like nothing had happened. I waited, frozen in place, listening for the sound of the locker room door closing before I let myself breathe. Once I thought he was gone, I started changing as fast as I could. But just as I pulled my pants up, the entire room went dark. My heart skipped a beat, and for a second, I couldn't move. Forcing myself to stay calm, I grabbed my backpack, slammed my locker shut in the dark, and headed toward the back exit that led straight outside. Each step echoed off the walls, and the silence made it worse, pressing down on me like I was being hunted. Deep down, I had this sick feeling he was still there, maybe waiting for me just beyond the door. My instincts screamed that something was wrong. At the end of the aisle, I needed to turn left to reach the exit, but I forced myself to glance right first. That's when my stomach dropped. In the faint glow of a single high window, I saw him. Half hidden, peeking at me from behind the lockers, his gray face just watching me. My chest tightened, and without a second thought, I bolted for the door. His voice followed me, fake and desperate. Wait, it's not what it looks like." That only made me run harder. I pushed through the exit and into the pouring rain, sprinting off the campus, my clothes soaked and my heart racing. I didn't stop until I was far away, every step confirming what I already knew. That substitute wasn't just creepy, he was dangerous. By the time I finally made it home, drenched from the storm, my mind wouldn't stop racing. The more I replayed it, the clearer it became. He had to be the one who messed with my locker combination. It was the perfect excuse to trap me alone in that locker room. And when the lights went out, my gut told me he had something much darker planned. Something I don't even want to let my imagination wander into. The thought still makes me sick. But back then, I was just a freshman, scared out of my mind and too ashamed to admit what had happened. I didn't tell my parents, not even my closest friends. I bottled it all up, pretending it was just some weird encounter I could shake off, even though inside I felt violated and unsafe in a place where I was supposed to feel protected. To this day, I've never shared it openly because the truth is, it makes me uncomfortable, like somehow speaking it out loud would make it real all over again. It's one of those things you carry with you in silence, hoping you'll never have to face something like that again. Back when I was in high school, I joined the band because, honestly, it was the easiest class you could take. The options were band, orchestra, or chorus, and I figured band would be the least painful. Our teacher, Mr. Nicholson, had this super easy grading system. If you just showed up to class and went to your weekly lessons, you'd get an A. No stress, no pressure. But toward the end of one quarter, I realized I had missed 2 of my lessons, and that dropped my grade down to a B. I wasn't about to let my GPA take a hit over something that simple, so I stayed after class one day to ask Mr. Nicholson if I could make them up. At first he looked kind of unsure, but then he said I could come in during lunch and practice in one of the storage rooms downstairs, and he'd give me credit for it. I remember feeling relieved, honestly even a little excited, because I knew I probably wasn't going to practice much anyway. Most likely, I'd just sit there, mess around on my phone, and call it a day. I showed up at the music room the next day during lunch, grabbed my saxophone, and headed downstairs toward the basement. Right away, I got that uneasy feeling. The basement was always creepy, with this stale, musty smell and flickering lights that barely worked. Hardly anyone ever went down there except the teachers, and I'd only been there a couple of times before. As I walked through the hallway, I passed by a row of small storage rooms, each maybe 7 feet by 7 feet, filled with random stuff. Extra chairs, music stands, old instruments, even dusty Christmas decorations. I picked one, stepped inside, and pulled the door shut behind me. The silence in there was heavy, like the walls were pressing in, but I brushed it off. I set up my music on the stand just in case Mr. Nicholson showed up, but truthfully, I had no intention of practicing. I sat down, pulled out my phone, and started playing games. That's when I heard it. Faint footsteps echoing in the hallway, slow and deliberate, like someone knew exactly where I was. Then, with a soft flick, the lights died. Total black, except for my phone screen. I slapped at the switch a few times, but nothing. I stood up, stumbling in the dark, and forced my phone out like a weak little flashlight. It barely lit the cracked linoleum, but it was enough to show the end of the hall. My throat tightened when I saw one of the tiny storage doors slowly open, like someone was easing it on purpose. From inside came the sound of something heavy being dragged, plastic scraping on tile, and a weird wet breathing that sounded almost animal. I froze, every hair on my arms standing up. Then the thing inside pushed a big plastic bin out into the hallway. It slid and bumped as if whatever was moving it didn't care how loud it was. The breathing grew louder, and there was this low, almost happy grunt that made my skin crawl. My first thought was run, but my legs felt like jelly. For a second I convinced myself it was just another student messing around. Then the bin shifted, and I saw a shadow move behind it. Too big to be a kid. My phone light shook as my hand trembled. I tried to back away, but the shadow took a step toward me, and the sound of dragging started up again, closer this time. I killed my phone screen and slipped back into the small room, closing the door as quietly as I could. I don't fully know what I was thinking. Maybe hiding felt safer than standing in that dark hallway while something dragged a bin and breathed like an animal. But I remember the fear, loud in my chest. The figure was blocking the stairs, and my phone showed no bars down in that basement, so calling for help felt useless. I sat on the floor with my back to the door, listening to every little sound, waiting for the lights to come back on. They didn't. after what felt like forever. I couldn't stand being trapped there any longer, so I crept to the door, cracked it, and eased into the hallway with my tiny screen lit again. I moved toward the stairs, heart in my throat, trying to be invisible, and then I heard something. Soft, deliberate, right behind me. I darted into the next storage room, slammed the door, and held my breath so hard it hurt, praying whoever was out there would keep walking. I still had no idea what I was hiding from. For a moment, I tried to tell myself it could be a janitor or another teacher, but the way whatever it was showed up only after the lights went out made that feel wrong. I sat in that black room listening so hard I could hear my own blood, waiting for any noise from the hall. You know that gut feeling when someone is in the room with you, even if you can't hear them? That hit me hard, like a weight on my chest. My hand trembled as I pressed the home button on my phone. For just a second, enough light to steal a look, and there he was. A shape standing in the corner, only a few feet away. I froze, tried to act like I didn't see him, but the silence broke the second after. I felt a hand pat my shoulder twice and then squeeze. It wasn't playful, it was tight and wrong. Panic took over. I dove for the doorknob, fumbling at first, but my fingers found it and I ripped the door open. He shoved to close it behind me, but I shoved back, pushed past him, and ran before he could grab me. My heart hammered so loud I thought I'd pass out. I didn't stop moving until I stormed up the stairs and out into the rain, shaking and knowing, with a sick certainty, that whatever that man was, he had been waiting for someone exactly where I was hiding. I remember sitting in that office the next day, still shaken, retelling every little detail, while part of me kept wondering if anyone truly believed how terrifying it was down there. On paper, it just sounded like someone trying to steal equipment, but being face to face with that man in the dark was something I'll never forget. It taught me how quickly a normal day can flip into a nightmare, and honestly, how important it is to trust your instincts. If something feels off, don't ignore it. Get out, speak up, and protect yourself. I'm just thankful I made it upstairs when I did, because who knows what might have happened if I froze for even a few more seconds. So when I share this story with you, it's not just to scare you. It's to remind you that danger can hide in the most ordinary places, and sometimes your gut is the only warning you'll get. Stay alert, stay safe, and never take those uneasy feelings lightly. One night, my friends and I cooked up what we thought was a genius idea. Sneak into the high school basement through this broken window nobody ever fixed. To get to it, you had to hop a short metal gate that sat around the outside stairs. Totally pointless as a real barrier, but it made the whole thing feel sneakier when you climbed over it. We checked the parking lot to make sure no security cars were around, then we hopped the gate and went for it. Getting through the window was messy. We had to boost each other up and squeeze through a really tight gap, but once we slipped inside and shut the world out behind us, it hit me that we'd actually pulled it off. We spread out, each of us curious about different corners, but the second my shoes hit that dusty floor, I knew this place was different. The air was heavy, almost damp, and every sound echoed way louder than it should have. The single white light flickered weakly in the far corner, casting long shadows that seemed to shift when you weren't looking. Even the red glow from the exit sign felt unsettling, stretching across the walls like veins. It wasn't just messy down there, it felt alive. Like the basement itself was watching us. I was wandering deeper into the basement when I noticed one of my friends standing just ahead of me. He leaned close and whispered, "Let's go upstairs." Something in his tone made me uneasy, but I followed anyway. He pushed open the heavy door and we stepped into the main hallway of the school. That's when it hit me. Total darkness. I always thought schools left a few lights on at night, but not here. The only glow came from the red exit signs, casting eerie streaks across the lockers like blood veins. We started walking down the hall, every step echoing louder than it should, and I muttered, "Dude, this is really creepy." He answered quickly, almost too quickly. "Yeah, but think about it. We don't know who else could be in here right now." His words sent a chill through me. Was he joking? Or was he serious? The thought that maybe someone else was already in the building made my skin crawl, But what I didn't realize in that moment was just how right he was. Something about the silence, the darkness, the way the air seemed to press in. It was all building towards something I wasn't ready for. I followed my friend down the dark hallway to the bathroom, and he slipped into a stall while I waited by the sink, whispering, "Hurry up." The place felt wrong. Those exit signs throwing red stripes across the tiles. But I tried to calm myself. After a minute, my phone rang. It was Chris. I answered, "Where are you guys?" And he said, "Where the hell did you go?" I told him I was upstairs with Roland or Brandon, and then weirdly both Brandon and Roland chimed in on speaker like they were right there with him. I froze, trying to figure out what was happening, and then a laugh cut through the room. A rough, breathy laugh that wasn't any of my friends. I looked at the stall and saw a face peeking over the top like someone was standing on the toilet, watching me. I panicked and kept shouting into the phone, "Guys, get out, get out!" I bolted for the door, and as I ran past, the stall door slammed so hard it rattled the whole bathroom. My heart was racing. I had no clue who that person was or why they were inside the school with us. I tried to run back to the basement in the dark, but it wasn't too easy to find in the dark. Luckily, I managed to find it, so I started to scream their names as I ran down the stairs. I screamed, "Go, go," when they answered, and we, one by one, jumped off some kind of bucket onto the window ledge and crawled back outside. I was the first one out though, afraid that person from the bathroom was following. When we finally got outside, I was out of breath, half laughing from relief as I told the others what happened. But that laugh died fast when we all glanced back at the school. In one of the downstairs windows, pressed against the glass, was a pale face and two hands staring out at us. We froze. Then Roland shouted for us to run, and we didn't stop until we were far away from the building. We came up with all kinds of explanations later, but honestly, nothing made sense, and that's why we never tried sneaking in again. So what do you think? Was it just some stranger hiding in the school, or something way darker? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out the other scary true stories on my channel. You won't want to miss them.